bottom of the screen, you will see a little raise your hand. So if you press that, we will then bring you into the meeting and you can make your comments. But before we begin, I'm going to take a roll call vote of the Board of Selectmen. I, Robin Hunter, present.
Dave Haviland, present.
Pam Hudson, present.
All right, so now we'll immediately go to the first item of business, which is citizens' comments. So once again, if you would like to make a comment, please select the raise your hand feature at the bottom of your screen, and we will then give you permission to make your comment. I don't trust myself. So Mike,
I don't see any.
Chris, did you see anybody? No. I mean, there are two attendees and nobody's raising their hand. All right. So then we're going to move to the first item of business, and I already see that our town assessor is here, Amy. So we are going to, the Board of Assessors are going, this is our annual, you can tell it's the beginning of the budget season here. This is our annual review of the tax rate. It's one of the first things we do as we begin the budget season, so to speak. So Amy Gao is our town assessor, and I'm going to turn it over to Amy. Amy, is your board going to be joining us? Are you with your board?
So my board is here. Yeah, I couldn't get in, so I'm on my phone.
All right.
So we have Bob Cox, Peter Goodall, and Charlie Long are here.
Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, so each year the assessors come before the Board of Selectmen to ask you to vote on 4 tax rate options. The first one is the residential factor, and that is to maintain a single tax rate with a factor of 1 or a split tax rate with a factor of less than 1. The second is the open space discount, and Dover does not have any property classified as open space. The third vote is for the residential exemption. This would shift the tax burden from the properties that are a principal residence to owners of vacant land or rental properties. And the fourth item is the small commercial exemption. And this would reduce the taxes of properties occupied by small businesses and shift the tax burden to larger commercial or industrial taxpayers. So the Board of Assessors are recommending a rental factor of 1, a no vote on the open space discount, a no vote on the residential exemption, and a no vote on the small commercial exemption.
Which is consistent with what your recommendation has been in prior years.
Correct.
And-
Dover has less than 3% commercial, so.
Right. So I don't have any questions or comments. I know last year we asked a number of questions about the rental property that was coming on board, and we went over how that doesn't qualify as a commercial residence. So I'll just remind citizens of that. I don't know if anybody has any comments or questions.
No, I learned a lot last year, so I would
Yeah,
like
me
to give
too.
Pam a chance to see if you've got questions, because the first time you see this, you're like, what? But after that, it makes a lot more sense.
No, if I hadn't done a little bit of research before I came to the meeting, I would have been bamboozled as well. But no, this makes complete sense to me.
And it's
All right.
also consistent with what we've done for many years. So we're
Right. And the most important thing is there's been no diversification in our housing stock or land or plan. So it's hard to change this.
yeah, if we vote to put it all in the small commercial exemption, I'm afraid we won't have our 3 businesses might leave. So
Right.
All right. So with that, I am going to move to approve the recommendation of the Board of Assessors for a single tax classification residential factor of 1, which results in the taxation of all property at the same rate with no open space discount, no residential exemptions, and no small commercial exemption.
Second.
All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Dave Haviland.
I, Cam Hudson.
And thank you, Amy, and thank you to your board for attending our meeting. If any of them have anything they would like to share with us,
Nope.
Thank you.
they're just happy it's over. All right. Well,
Exactly.
thank you,
They
everyone.
got their yes. They're hitting the trail.
Right.
Are they
Thank
still
you.
there?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks very
Thank you,
much.
everyone. Good evening.
Bye now.
All right, so the next item of business, and I don't expect this one to be that quick, is item 1.2 on the agenda. And this evening we have representatives from the Personnel Board that are going to make a presentation regarding their recommendation for a cost of living market adjustment for the non-union personnel. And I believe also Robin Tassino will be a part of this presentation. Am I correct, Mike?
You're right. She just joined.
Okay. So this again is one of the first things we do at the start of our budget season. Things are a little bit reversed this time. The Warrant Committee got this presentation last week and they had some questions. And given that our meeting is on Tuesday and their meeting is tomorrow, I believe the Personnel Board is going to go back to their meeting tomorrow or Robin to answer some of those questions. So Warrant has not voted on this yet. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to the presenters, which are Sue Jeremiah, Juris, I believe. I don't see him. So I do see Sue and I see Robin.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm
All right.
happy to be here. And I thank you all for including us in this Board of Selectmen meeting. I was wondering, I think Mona sent the presentation and I didn't know if someone could screen share that from your end.
Trying to see if I have the PowerPoint.
If not, I can probably do it. It's not my specialty. and usually you're just going to end up seeing everything else that I have on my screen.
Like it is
email,
part of the
everything.
packet. If you just want to go to the packet and it starts on page 5.
Sure, whichever you prefer. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. I know my limitations. So again, just thank you for including us in the Board of Selectmen meeting tonight. I'm Sue Jeremiah, and I'm joined by my Personnel Board co-chair, Juris, who, if you don't see him, I'm sure he'll be on shortly.
Yeah, I didn't see him. So, oh, you know what? No, there's an M. Boudreau in there.
That's
No.
Mish. That's Warrant
It's
Committee.
niche.
Okay, okay. Oh, that's right. So,
And I also have Robin Tassino here, the HR Director for the Town of Dover. Thank you, Robin, for joining. We are here on behalf of the Personnel Board and are pleased to present the Personnel Board's COLA recommendation for fiscal year 27. To start, there are a number of external factors that impact the COLA recommendation. As you can see, inflation, housing costs, energy and commodities, healthcare expenses, which we are hearing about in the news on a daily basis, wage growth, interest rates, and particularly relevant to us in the past year, the municipal labor market. So we're going to tackle a few of these just to show you how we went through our process of figuring out what might be the best recommendation. In arriving at our recommendation, we examined a number of factors closer to home. To begin, we looked at the CPI for Boston, Cambridge, and Newton, which was 3.2% over the July to July year, as you can see. We also considered what was happening in towns around Dover. And as you can see, in general, these are the towns that we sometimes compete against for qualified new talent. Notably, Dedham and Needham have committed to a 3.3% COLA. And importantly, we just learned that Sherburne has approved a COLA of 3.2% for fiscal year 27. So again, in a competitive marketplace, we're trying to stay on top of being able to retain and attract qualified talent. Okay. Additionally, we felt it was important to consider the rising costs of healthcare and how this too will impact our employees' paychecks. And I know this screen looks a little daunting. I think the most relevant thing is that for Blue Cross Blue Shield and Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, the two plans that I believe are offered to the Dovertown employees, they expect a 13.8% increase at the very least in the next year. We don't know the exact impact to our Dovertown employees yet, but we do anticipate that 30% of the healthcare cost increase will be passed on to them. So just another in our looking at our worldview of how many things are impacting the lives of those who work in Dover and are non-union. This is one of them, we believe. So having those things in mind, we wanted to just take a step back and say and review that there are two components to the employee compensation plan. The step one structure, which nearly 100% of Massachusetts towns have a step increase structure, and over 75% use it for all employees, including collective bargaining agreements. This allows the town to hire at market, reward tenure, and cap salaries at market maximums. And we can get back to that with some numbers in a few minutes. But what we're talking about today is the market structure or the general increase. And the general increase, as a reminder, is a COLA recommendation by the Personnel Board in conjunction with the Warrant Committee and the Board of Selectmen as part of the budget voted at town meeting. And Robin, as you mentioned, we met with the Warrant Committee on October 22nd, and they had a number of questions that were really good and enabled us to tighten up this presentation. We have provided them with all the information that they requested and have asked to see if they have any questions. And I know they're meeting tomorrow, and I anticipate that they're voting tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure, but as you mentioned, we're a little bit back and forth on that. But I think it was important to make sure that they had everything they needed around some of the indices in particular, and also the percentage of healthcare, the percentage of what the healthcare cost is to the overall budget for Dover. So there were a couple of really, I thought, very good questions that, I'm happy they're taking the time to look through. So again, our focus today is on the recommendation for the general increase or the COLA for fiscal year 27. So I hope that helps just sometimes to take a step back and remind us. So before arriving at our recommendation, we took a look at the local environment of late. And this was mentioned on that first slide, that our municipal labor market considerations have, I think, come to the forefront more directly and more forcefully than we have felt in previous years. So under labor market concerns, as you'll see here, it's noted that municipal sources have noted scarcity of qualified available municipal workers. The town of Dover is facing increased competition for qualified staff. Dover experienced recently the need to offer salaries above midpoint of our compensation bands in order to secure necessary staff. And the Personnel Board has been engaged in those conversations. All of this drives up municipal compensation needs, even when inflation may be slowly abating. So the importance of COLA in our recommendation is that a slightly higher COLA prevents costly turnover and loss of institutional knowledge, as we know. I feel strongly about that. Providing a meaningful COLA demonstrates that the town values employee contribution and fairness across all levels. A modestly higher COLA is less costly to the town than repeated recruiting and onboarding costs, as we know. And proactively adopting a modestly higher COLA helps maintain Dover compensation levels at a more competitive place in a more competitive municipal labor market. So our goal, of course, again, is to remain competitive, to attract great candidates, and to retain qualified talent. So this next slide provides context for what our recommendation will mean for the town in dollars. So if we look at what we were talking about earlier as step one, the anticipated cost for the step one piece is for FY 2027 is $125,000, $126,000 rounded up. So that doesn't impact our discussion on our recommendation for COLA, but it's just nice to know what that is when you're looking at the compensation package. As an example, what this chart does is it tells you that with a 1% adjustment on the anticipated base would be rounded up $52,000, whereas a 3.2% increase would be $167,000. So I hope that helps just sort of explain what we're talking about in dollars and cents. Are there any questions so far?
So, you know, I look at comp a little differently to the way you do. I look at comp as total comp, which does include healthcare costs as well, because, you know, that is just part of the compensation packages that we're providing to employees. For me, the most important aspect of comp is that we're bringing people in at a competitive wage and that we have a mechanism in place, which I believe we do, with our surveys to ensure that we're always, our employees are always paid a competitive wage. Because I believe that is what retains employees. You want to bring employees at a competitive wage. That wage needs to remain competitive. I'm not sure that the COLA aspect of it is going to be the catalyst for high turnover. I think there are some other not there are, you know, you have to provide a good place to work. So the physical environment in which you're working, the make sure that people have challenging work as well. So I think all of this ties in to what I look at as a total compensation bucket for employees. I think the analysis that you've done is really good. For me now, I also know that when I look at our total budget for the year 26 and I look out at 27 and 28, and if I think about not having to have an override, the increase in our budget at 2.5%, the increase in dollars is going to be somewhere around 1.5 million. And I already know of that 1.5 million, approximately 400,000 is going to be taken up by this increase in healthcare. So as I think about that and I try and think about COLA, and I recognize that $167,000 isn't all that much. However, what this does impact is it becomes a data point for all of our other employees. And 80% of our budget really is employee costs. And so I am deathly concerned about the financial viability of the town, given if our costs or a majority of our costs are going up by 3% or above 3%,
Yes.
and our revenues are only going up 2.5%. So for me, you've made an extremely compelling.
Robin,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to know if you had questions on this slide. I hadn't really finished yet.
Okay. Oh,
with the
sorry.
presentation.
Okay.
But if you want to stop here, that's fine.
No, sorry.
I know I just wanted to make sure everyone understood what these numbers were. And I will interject that I am here, as a co-chair of the personnel board. I don't really know in depth. I understand exactly what you're saying as a board of selectmen. I'm just really here to share with you the things that we've talked about in terms of looking at other towns, in terms of the COLA being just one piece. You're absolutely right. One piece of a much larger picture,
Right.
if you will, a jigsaw puzzle. And
Right.
it's the flexibility of the workplace. It's healthcare benefits. It's, do you have a place to park? Is there any public transportation? How far is my commute? I mean, there are so many variables that come into this. And we are just now engaging in another class and comp study, which we do every number of years. But now our data is old again, because obviously things change so much.
Right.
And they have changed dramatically in the last year. I don't know why that. I'm sure inflation has a lot to do with it. So we can only make the recommendation to you based on the numbers that we're looking at. We really don't have the picture that you have. So I'll just finish, talking about what we know. I don't even have access to some of the data points, but just in our role as the personnel board, this is what we're presenting. And so I was just asking if anyone had a question on this page, but
right. And I think your presentation is excellent. It's just
I
not
understand.
only is it a compensation jigsaw puzzle, it's a
I understand
jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, I understand what you're wrestling with. There's no question. So I'll be quick and I'll just finish. And that's if that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry to.
No.
I've been agonizing over this after looking at your presentation.
Yeah, all we can do is provide you with the facts, and then whatever decision the town makes based on your overall budget, of course, we support. So, as a reminder, we are focused on the non-union management professional and admin and the non-union fire department employees. So you can see those two populations. This is a recap of the data summary. We don't need to go through this. ECI 3.9, Social Security 2.8, the comparison of area communities with the COLA recommendation is about 2.7, 2.8%, and the CPIU change for the Boston, Cambridge, and Newton area 3.2, all of which was mentioned earlier. Based on our view of this piece of the puzzle, or this piece of the pie, let's say, the personnel recommends a general increase of 3.25% at the cost of 167. It is noteworthy that the town of Sherburne, our municipal competitor, has recently approved a 3.2% COLA increase. Given Dover's turnover rate of 8% from 7/1/24 to 6/30/25, it's important not only to update our compensation schedules, as we are in the process of doing, but also proactively adopt COLA market adjustments to enable recruitment of the best talent. We do the best we can to look at the data that we have. And, I feel that being an advocate in this regard is probably what the personnel board should do. And I don't need to make your role any more difficult in, trying to decide what that COLA percentage should be based on the overall town budget. And of course, there are competing needs. And I think we're going into a time where we're trying to balance a lot of budgetary constraints, which I am aware of, not in detail, but I assume. So of course, we're happy to answer any questions, and you know, if there's any more information that you need, I know that you won't be voting on this tonight because the warrant committee still needs to meet and vote tomorrow. And, ultimately, all we can do is present to you what we have found by the data that we've looked at and, advocate to that end.
So I've got a question on the general competitiveness situation. And as you know, we're doing an experiment in the town to have a 4-day work week in the townhouse, and we're getting feedback that that's a really positive and attractive element of the complete package. And I'm wondering whether during your research with various competitive towns, whether that has also been an element of their total compensation packages, or whether this is something special for Dover, and in which case, if we were to continue this 4-day week, then we might be able to get by with somewhat less than a total cost of living increase that matches completely what Sherborne or other neighboring communities are doing.
Oh, so you're saying that Sherborne being 3.2 is probably pretty much the same as what we are recommending.
Exactly.
So I'm going to hand this over to Robin to answer because she is living and breathing it more so than I am. And I think it's kind of to Robin's point where you're taking all these pieces of the pie or piece of the puzzle.
Right.
For some people, it means a lot. I think for most people, and I know certainly for most people, if they know they can work in 4 days, a 5-day work week in 4 days, that is an allure. But again, it probably depends on if it's a young family with a high mortgage, maybe and they don't want to commute 5 days a week. They only want to commute 4 for that to save that expense. And that's going to be more important. I think it's circumstantial to it. I wish I could be analytical about that, but I think it's a little more circumstantial. But I shouldn't answer that. I should let Robin speak to that if she doesn't mind.
Okay, thanks, Sid.
So I can tell you from the applicants that I've met and talked to, and as well as the existing employees, a 4-day work week is very positive. People are excited about it. They feel it provides a work-life balance. And people who are very capable are willing to come to Dover. We're a small community. They're coming from larger communities, and we are starting to attract quality talent. In the 4-day work week, I believe, is a good portion of that. Good reason for it.
Good to know. Thanks, Robin.
You're welcome.
I also think, Robin, it's important to note, and Sue touched on it, for the key positions that we filled this year, we actually had to go to the personnel board because the best candidates were the ones that were at the top of our range or beyond our range. And the personnel board did approve that. And I think that helped as well, because I think we got the right kind of talent for the jobs that we were filling, whereas before, I think some of the individuals didn't quite have the experience that we needed. Because even though we're a small town, we're somewhat, it doesn't make it easier,
No,
right?
They
You
still have to do the
need the
exact same work.
expertise, right?
exactly. It doesn't matter the size of the town.
Right, right. So to me, as I think about this, one of the most important thing is making sure that our base pay for individuals is competitive within the marketplace. And we've been forced to do that with all of these positions. And I do believe that if we don't continue to be competitive, which is why this salary survey is so important, we're not going to be able to retain talent or attract good talent. we also have to face facts as a smaller town. Good people are going to learn and then go off to a larger town because they can just pay more and there's more of a challenge
Yeah, but
in.
we know where they live now, so Chris and Mike, don't get any ideas. Robin, So
Well, we're just going to keep adding jobs. So then you can pay a whole lot more. It will be like a big town.
So, and Robin, one of the things we struggle with is, it seems to us that we do the study, it takes a long time to do the study, then we implement the study,
And then it's out of date.
and now we're already a year and a half behind where we were before. And so then we start another study 4 years later. And so the 3.2 was a little bit of a, we know we're about to engage in the study, which should be done in 6 months. But again, we feel because of what's happened recently that we're a little behind. So again, I get that, we're trying to manage all these pieces.
to that point, I've actually got a suggestion that would be very helpful for everyone who's having to look at this from an analysis side from you all. And that is to get 5 years worth of data on all these comparisons and all of these indices by year. They won't always match because half of these statistics are calendar, half of these statistics are fiscal. So it's not going to match exactly. But to me, it's much more important to know where we are, at least over the last 3 years, because quoting the Sherburne at 3.2, what if last year Sherburne gave their employees 1%? So this would be their makeup year. So that's the type of data where you've got to look at 5 year averages. Where are we? And to wit, on the Boston CPI, I'll now go calendar for FY20 was 1.1, 21 was 3.3, 22 was 7.1, 23 was 3.7, and 24 was 3.2. So on a 5 year average, inflation went up 3.68%. The non-union personnel over that same 5 years, although now it's fiscal, was 2.6%. So to me, having the background and the relevancy, because just plucking numbers out of the air and saying this community did X, but only for 1 year, it's not enough data for you. You're living this, Sue, and everyone on your committee, right? So you're immersed in this, but we're trying to make an analysis, and we need the information over time. It will make it much easier.
Right. So the one thing I'd say is I would love to not be in a reactive mode. And so I think that if we can ascertain ahead of time what the warrant committee and the Board of Selectmen would like. I mean, compensation data, I've worked in HR for a long time. I did not work in compensation. And I'm happy to have anyone join us on the board who has a deep roots in compensation. Of course, I've worked around it and I've worked with employee packages. So, but when it comes to ECI and CPI and all these indices, I think if we can know ahead of time that you, Dave, would like to look at the 5 years, which makes sense, or that we need to know the percentage of healthcare costs against the entire budget, which is not something that I had focused on in the past. So, we can have like 100 pages of stuff. So, and I'm not saying we're not happy to do that, but of course, whatever, I think we have to kind of figure out what is important to the Board of Selectmen and the warrant committee from the personnel board in terms of data and what to look at and helping you both make that assessment.
So I'm also wondering if you could let us know what were the key points that made the personnel board decide to go with a 3.25%, which is towards the top of the towns we've looked at. Why we should be up there? What are the key factors there that made you come to that conclusion?
Well, we operate as a board, And so we all had different opinions about this. So I'm not sure it's relevant for me to share why we ended up there,
Yeah.
because I don't want to undermine the number that we presented.
No, that's reasonable.
So we try to present this, and there was a lot of discussion about, but again, I think the thing that's most relevant, and I understand your point, Dave. Well, if Sherburne only gave 1% last year, but again, I think for the COLA, we're really trying to address a recent cost of living. It's a cost of living adjustment for what we perceive to be happening and what will happen. So I think in this regard, the fact that Sherburne did 3.2 is really relevant to us, and that Needham and Dedham are at 3.0, which is not that different from 3.2. From my perspective.
No, understood. But do you see where we're coming from? Where yes, the most recent data is very important, but you can inadvertently help or hurt your employees without meaning to if you're just doing everything in a 1-year snapshot. You've got to look and here, looking at the Boston CPI versus what we've actually given is one data point. The other thing is, I understand that it's different and not COLA, but there is also a step. And anyone who stays for a year will be getting a 2.5% step increase, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Well, I did
the
speak to
step-
that earlier in the, and again, I think all the points you're making are valid. It's just that we need to know ahead of time, because there are just so many things. The warrant committee had a lot of things, the pages and pages of that Robin put together on explaining what the ECI is. So I hear what you're saying. Compensation is very complicated, and maybe we need someone from the outside who's a professional to actually look at all these like really complicated data points to come up with a recommendation rather than the personnel board.
I'm not sure they're as complicated as we just have to make sure we're comparing apples to apples. And so when you're looking at a CPI or a Social Security increase, that's everything. So for us to carve out step and then just give COLA and compare it against everything is not an apples to apples.
Right. So Dave, I think you have to be really careful because there's only a certain percentage, and it's a very small percentage, if I remember correctly, of this population that is actually getting the step.
Right.
So a majority of this population is already at the highest point, and the step doesn't pertain to them. So a majority of the population to keep their salary competitive is getting COLA. So, again, it goes back to how do we maintain competitive salaries? Is it just the COLA that's going to do it? And no, it's the marketplace in general. And we've seen that, to Sue's point and to Robin's point, only until recently are we actually getting some great candidates and choices for open positions that we have. And not to mention the strongest candidates, we've had to up the salaries. So clearly we are at the lower end for certain positions. The question is it all positions or not? And to Sue's point, it takes so long to get these studies done, that you're behind the 8 ball by the time you get the study done. But we do get interim data points when we go out and hire people, and we know we have to pay more.
And not only are we paying more, we're hiring them in the middle
of
of the range at the very least. And that means they've got fewer steps that they can go before they get to the top of the class. So
and that
that's
hasn't been
also
the case.
problematic.
That hasn't been the case.
But bear with me. I am not opining or saying one way or the other than the data that is being presented is a mishmash of comparisons.
So Dave,
Well, hold on. Let me just finish my thought. Some of them are annual, some of them are fiscal, some of them are municipal versus other government, some is general inflation all across the country. Then we're picking some towns and saying, this is what they're doing. We don't know what their STEP program is. We don't know what percent of the health care their employees have to pay. There's a lot of information that could mislead those of us who then ultimately have to make the decision. And I'm very curious to see what the warrant committee discusses tomorrow night. And none of this is oh, this is bad or anything like that. Far from it. It's fantastic. But in the future, the way to improve it is to, if you're collecting this data every year, put it in a spreadsheet, and then we'll have it consistently. So we'll know, what did Sherburne do for the last 5 years? What did Dedham do for the last 5 years? That to me is a much more relevant comparison than just picking one year. That was my only point, is that
I
we have
know,
to have our statistics apples
right.
to apples.
I know I know it makes perfect sense. And I know this is going to sound strange, but when HR is looking at COLAs, like cost of living adjustments, you tend to look at what's happening around you real time.
Right.
And I know that you can't compare an ECI to a CPI to all these, but it's giving you a sense of what's happening in the economy and what's happening regionally, locally. They're just data points. And you're right, it seems like a mishmash, but HR often does look just to have an idea. What's happening with the ECI? What's happening with CPI? They're not, you can't link them, and they're not relevant to this directly. It's just data points about what's happening in real time in terms of what people are recommending. And happy. I don't even know if I have access to all the data you're saying. Half the time, we're trying to get this stuff. It's not always easy to get information from towns. They don't share it all the time. And I don't know why that is, but we've had that historically happen, which is why some of the studies take longer, because you've got to really kind of get it. And Robin, you can speak to this. But I think at the end of the day, we've had a lot of requests for data. And I think if we know ahead of time, or whomever might be doing these spreadsheets for you, it's not always that easy to get all this data. And when you get it, it's in enormous volumes. So I understand what you're saying. And I think what you want is the past 5 years of, you were saying you want, like,
And Robin Tessino's already provided this, Sue. So she gave us the non-union personnel on their actual COLAs for the last 5 years.
Okay.
And so that's there. And then all I did was look up Boston CPI for the last 5 calendar years. But
What was the
instead of
first
a
one
chart,
Robin had? Okay. That's fine. I'm glad that you have it.
yeah, no, exactly. But that's what I meant by a suggestion for the future. It's very helpful to have this data in context versus.
So the CPI, the ECI, and what was the one Robin provided?
Just past the past COLA adjustments.
Colas.
For Dover.
It was
For
just for
region
the
or national?
Dover.
Right.
Region?
No, just
Region
for
or
Dover.
national? Okay.
Yeah, just Dover. Because what have we given? It's like, if you don't
But
know
I
that,
don't
then
know.
it gets
I don't
real
know
hard
if that's. But I don't know that it's always relevant if inflation is the thing we're trying to project. So what we did last year may not be as relevant to what we need to do in the future.
Right, but I think it's again, and Sue, what you've said, everything you've done is correct, and we're just looking at various data points, and we've always looked at the same data points. And actually, the unions in their negotiations, they look at the same data points as well when they're asking for their cost of living adjustments. So I think all we're trying to do is just look back and see, well, what was the increase we gave and what was inflation, and are we digging a deeper
Right.
hole
So
for ourselves or not?
this is the presentation I inherited from Mary Kerrigan all those years ago. So it was my assumption that it's what the selectmen and warrant committee wanted. And
It probably was at some point in time.
So I'm really
Yeah,
sorry.
right.
I'm really sorry that I haven't delivered what you need, because
No,
it has never
no,
been asked of
No
us
need to
before.
I don't think
apologize,
And
that's
Sue,
I
at
don't think
all. It
that's
was a
really the point,
suggestion for
Sue.
next
I
year.
think, yeah, I think the point is more as we go forward, if we could orient ourselves more towards that sort of data, it would help us to get a much better picture. So there's no criticism of what you've been doing.
At
I think
all.
it's just a suggestion going forward. We might look at it in a slightly different way. Um, and
And
I would add that we don't, it would be great. Ideal would be to have cost of living adjustments of neighbouring towns as well, so that we can get a sense of how we're standing in relation to them. And if they've been, as Dave said, it's difficult for us to know whether Sherburne's 3.2% is something that is keeping them ahead of the pack, or they've decided they had to catch up to the pack. And having more longitudinal data helps there. And I know it's difficult, and I know you'll have a challenge to get there, but I think that's a really good approach.
So actually, Sue, I think we can help you out. We can work with Warrant and prepare a summary because we have all the data from prior presentations. And so
Mhm.
that next year, when we start this, we can just update it for the current year data.
well,
exactly.
apologies. If I had known, I would have told
Yes,
that. It's
so there's
But
no
you,
need for
when
apologies.
anyone
Don't
has asked
Absolutely
for
apologize.
it.
none.
It makes
You've
perfect
done
sense.
nothing
It's
worth
just,
apologizing for.
yeah,
There's nothing to
well,
we
apologize
never
for.
asked for
it
it
feels that way.
before. We apologize for not thinking of asking for it before.
That's a
So
better apology. That one I'll agree with.
Yeah,
So no,
yeah.
but to your point, Sue, and to support your committee's conclusions, over the last 5 years, the non-union personnel have been given 2.6 on average, whereas the Boston CPI, albeit calendar, has been 3.6.
right,
So
and
they're
then we
behind
also
a percentage point on average each year.
and again we also need to look at all the unions and see how we need to look at a lot more data and again I think Sue's right. It's like this beginning of budget season, and maybe what we should do is really after town meeting think about, well, what data are we going to need to make some of these critical things so that we
Yeah,
can better prepare. It's not,
yeah,
and also just our budget is so much tighter, and we have so many competing issues and so many unknowns, like we have no idea if if grant funding is still going to be there, so we're trying to be cautious, but at the same time we're only as good as our human resources in town. And right now we have finally put together a team that I think is world class. And we just want to make sure that that team gets paid competitively, that is continued to be challenged, which I believe we can do for them. And, and the cost of turnover again is one of your highest costs. But at the same time, our revenue only goes up by 2.5%. So we have
Exactly. We
to
got
figure
prop two
this
and a
out.
half on the other side. But Sue, I just want to reiterate
Yeah, it was
that,
a great conversation and
yeah, this has been great information. We really appreciate what you and your committee have done. It is so difficult, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Um, the last board might not have asked for this information.
oh, trust me, we didn't, because if we did, they would have had it. So
Yeah, well, there you go. So, and it's good to have these conversations, but Warrant's going to weigh in tomorrow. Robin has articulated our overall concern and Warrant's overall concern, which is his little thing called Prop 2.5. And we will have to deal with the overall budget. So now I'm going to ask a question to Mike or Robin. We're not going to vote on this tonight until
right.
Warrant waits in, right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I just have to say, I don't want any of our staff to think that we don't think they do a great job and we're not trying to give them the maximum amount we can, because that isn't true. This is no reflection on their performance. It's just we have a whole bunch of balls in the air. And I mean, I just did this back of the envelope calculation and started hyperventilating as to what this year's budget is going to look like and how we're going to find the pieces so that we can have a balanced budget at town meeting. I just think it's going to be a really difficult year for us. But you can't balance the budget on a small group of employees, but at the same time, we have to make sure that we allocate the resources accordingly, and fairly.
One of the points that is worth noting somewhere, if nothing just on this recording, is if the non-union personnel, the vast majority are not going to get a step because they don't have them. The unions typically have more steps, if I'm not mistaken, and more of those employees or personnel, whatever the right word is, are getting step increases in addition. Because my concern is we need to treat our non-union personnel right, but it can't be a tee-off point for the larger unions, all of which have contract negotiations this year. And if they're looking at this information and saying, great, that's our base.
And
Well,
that is going to be the base for the COLA. But again, Dave, it's not that simple because, like, for instance, um, the region, I believe 60% of the teachers are on the matrix. Chickering is the reverse. So it's not it you it's not apples and apples again. And that's why these compensation studies are so important. But to Sue's point, they're old data by the time you adopt them. So it's just the marketplace. We know unemployment is ticking up. Well, we don't know that because we don't have data right now, but we believe from the news that we're seeing that the unemployment rate is going up. So that may help ease inflation in the labor market. But again, and the hardest thing is this is a key input into the budget, and we're deciding on this input without really knowing what the rest of the budget looks like.
Yeah, that's the biggest
But you have
challenge.
to make, but you have to make a decision, you know.
Right.
So all this anxiety could be for nothing once,
hmm
but I don't think so.
So, Robin, Robin Tessino, do you have any statistics on in the various classes of employees that we've got, what portion of those are at the top of the step if they're on a step system?
I do not.
Is that something you could pull together at some point?
I could.
Because that would be helpful as well.
Yeah, I remember like a couple of years ago we had that data and it was sort of surprising at how small a percentage. But again, we've had some turnover,
hmm
so maybe it's different now.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm just going to start by saying thank you, Sue and Robin and everyone else who worked on this. We do
Yeah.
recognize it is a large pile of work and not easy to get. Sometimes it's got to be like pulling teeth. But you've got a lot of data here, and we thank you. And hopefully, like going forward, you'll just keep a spreadsheet and roll this data forward. You only have to get, one CPI number, one of each. And then we're done. And then we'll
And
also
I
have
think
it on the competing towns, our neighbors. That's who we compete against, right?
Yeah,
Right.
but they don't give up information that easily. That's
Right. And the other point to note is that, Sue, you and your team have done a valiant effort, all as volunteers, and that is really something and has to be appreciated.
Absolutely.
right. And our questions are by no means a criticism on the work you've done.
Right,
Your
right.
presentation is actually really good.
No, I think
Mhm.
at the end of the day, everyone's time is valuable, and we certainly didn't want to present you with something tonight that was inadequate. And certainly, it's what we've used. It's the same format. In fact, we've improved it over the years. And I
Right.
think we've used it for 10 years. So
Mhm.
I understand what you're saying. I just wish, we could have been a little bit more prepared. And I feel like we wasted some time in not having all that. So I apologize.
Not at
No,
all.
you don't need to apologize.
No.
As we've said time and again, Sue, if there's apologies to be made, it's us for not giving you advance notice on the sorts of things we might be interested in. So,
So Robin, perhaps we could make a little note on the calendar that next year, before everybody leaves for the summer, that maybe we think about some of the data we want so that when we get back, everybody can be prepared. Chris,
That'd be
another
great.
thing to add to our calendar, because it's an excellent point, It's people spend a lot of time and let's think about let's see if we can improve the process ourselves. So even, ask Warrant as they're starting to think about it, what kinds of information would they like to see?
Mhm.
Well, there's certainly a change, and I think a lot of it has to do with the pressure financially on employees and governments and businesses, as we know, across the board. So, we might be looking at things a little bit differently, which is fine. We're happy to do that. And again, you know, I feel like ultimately you will know the best decision to make about the COLA, not in looking at the overall budget. We are coming at it from one angle. So it's in
Right.
your hands, of course. And all we can do is help to provide the data to help you make that decision.
No,
So
and,
Yeah,
and
thanks, Sue. But I'm not so sure we'll make the best decision, but we'll give it our best shot.
We're only in one lane, whereas you are looking at the whole highway.
Yeah.
So I think that's we trust
Mhm.
you that will.
and there's
that
a
this
lot
is-
of
this is only
traffic
a
on the
piece.
highway.
This is only a piece. Yeah. All right.
All right, well, thank you, everyone, and
Yes.
we'll send you the spreadsheet. Dave's gonna put it together. He asked for us to put it together.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
When you ask
Bye
for
now.
something, it becomes your job.
Bye now. Thank
Thanks
you.
Bye,
a lot.
everyone.
Have a great night.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right. So the next item of business is to approve the calendar of events and the budget calendar. And those, as I mentioned at the last meeting, Chris, Woody, and I got together and we thought it would be a really good idea to put together a very comprehensive calendar with all the key critical dates and then track as to how we hit those dates. Um, so I think right before the meeting, we got the first draft of the calendar. So I don't know if people have had an opportunity to look at it, or Chris, if you want to provide some insight.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I can pull it up. I know it came
Okay.
over in close proximity to the start of the meeting, so
Yeah.
happy to share and
Yeah, this is
walk
the problem with
through.
Tuesday meetings.
Definitely threw me off. Yeah.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
thing,
it's been it's taken me a little bit more time than I expected, admittedly, to compile all the feedback. So part of that's on me as well.
right.
That's why I wanted to kind of walk through it with everybody tonight and solicit any feedback and honestly try to capture anything that I might have overlooked or missed. So yeah. So did anybody else have any thoughts? Or you just want me to jump right into it.
Yeah, so Chris, I just briefly looked at it. The only thing,
Mhm.
I also want to keep track of is whether or not we're hitting these deadlines, because if you
Mhm.
miss them, it throws everything else off. And I also,
Correct.
full disclosure, want to think about if I see anything that maybe we missed. So I'll get feedback back to you probably later in the week.
Yeah.
Yeah,
One,
and
one,
that's
one other comment that I had, Chris, was I'd very much like to see the capital budgeting process integrated into this as well, because it's a really key input into the whole budgeting procedure. I noticed that Mike did send out a calendar on the capital budget um, also this evening, but we're not meeting the dates there yet, so that's putting pressure on the capital budget committee to actually get moving. And until they've got a budget, they really can't act very much. So it's I think that's a critical issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand that, and this is probably more of an unusual year for
Right.
capital, but there's a way I
Yeah,
think we can include
granted,
the calendar.
absolutely.
For sure. So yeah, I'll try to be mindful of that. And when I have, more exact dates as to when we're going to present that, that can certainly
Hmm.
be incorporated. So I hate to turn the whole thing into a moving target because it's always good to, set a course before we go down it. And that's kind of what I tried to do with this first draft of the calendar events. And I think this kind of mirrors what the overall strategy is between the finance department, the warrant committee, and even the board of selectmen to a certain extent, is that we want to try to incrementally improve the process, right? Just like how we had just went through the discussion with the COLA. It's, hey, we're
Right.
looking at things slightly differently. We're making tweaks here and there and really kind of testing out ways to improve efficiency, make better decisions, all the above. So I will say the bulk of the conversations I had about this schedule revolved around the construction of one of the main deliverables for town meeting, which is the Blue Book. I know there's been a ton of discussion and suggestions surrounding that Blue Book, and Woody, Micheline, and Nina from the Warrant Committee had all sat down and discussed the Blue Book in the direction that everybody wanted it to go in numerous times in developing this calendar events. And that really kicks off the bulk of the highlights you see here that are the new additions. And what we came up with to help meet deadlines, keep things on track, and stay organized was a overall warrant kind of tracker sheet where we're gonna input all the articles and keep tabs on them throughout, kind of that 3-month window where we're all working really hard on developing them. And then also some forms that will hopefully simplify the write-up process for the warrant committee and help, you know, put in some gates for developing the write-ups throughout the whole season rather than it just being a task at the end of the season, which can put quite a restraint on the content in the Blue Book. So what you'll see here is on January 8th, that's the day that the warrant closes. We'll take all the forms that were submitted and distribute those right out to the selectmen and the warrant committee. So you can see pretty much as instantly as possible what was submitted. And that will be a good way to make sure everybody has access to the primary information literally the day that it all is finalized. So from there, it'll resume normal activity between warrant and selectmen as part of our normal course of business. No changes there in terms of reviewing the articles, discussing them. But what you will start to see is on January 26th, this is where we're going to have some town staff supporting the coordination and organization of the articles and development of the Blue Book. So we're going to put out a request for a check-in on the articles. And hopefully at this time, we'll have some preliminary ideas fleshed out on the content of the articles between warrant and selectmen. And at that point, we'll ask for that content and use that to update the tracker in terms of where a particular article is at. Throughout the rest of the schedule, a periodic every 2 weeks, we're going to be doing that check-in, and that'll just help us kind of stay on track to make sure that discussion is happening in a timely manner, and that nothing's getting left to the later stages of the budget process where there can be that time crunch. So we're going to help support we're being as in town staff, myself, Suzanne, and Mike, and Mona. Will help kind of administratively organize that for warrant committee and the selectmen. Other big changes you'll see, I think the most notable one is moving up open hearing 1 week before what we would typically have it in town. I think it's usually on the 3rd week of March. We're going to move it up to the 9th. And this change is really, I think, throughout the process of town meeting and developing articles, I think everybody looks at open hearing as that kind of major checkpoint to say, hey, we're almost camera ready. Let's get some feedback and see what we need to do to maybe tweak the articles or put final touches on it. And I think that's tremendously valuable to the process. But how much time do we really have to make necessary changes before we have to send a book into production? So the open hearing is moved up 1 week to allow us a little more clearance to make budgetary changes, to allow people to incorporate feedback that they received at open hearing, and enough time for that information to disseminate to the warrant committee so they can finalize the write-ups, which is happening on the 23rd. Is when the warrant committee final article reports would be due. After that, town staff, we've developed a new template for the Blue Book that we're going to be continuing to work on throughout the fall, with the hopes of having the template finalized before the new year. So we're ready to go with the template of the Blue Book before the process starts. And that is an entirely new template and design that we've shown rough drafts to some members of the warrant committee. We'll continue to do draft updates along the way.
So I assume, Chris, this will allow for parts of the Blue Book to get written a lot earlier, right?
Correct. Yeah, and at the very least, if everything is finalized on the 23rd, then it should be in. I think the check-ins throughout the process will enable us to have tighter final drafts even by the 23rd, which will make the review process much smoother and allow us to have a lot more confidence in what we're putting in the book.
So part
of
this article check-in tracker update thing, I'm assuming capital budget is part of it as well, right?
Yeah. See, I'm sort of still a little bit confused because you've got one schedule for the capital budget and one for the warrant committee and the board of selectmen, and it's sort of difficult to work out how they all fit together and whether they gel together correctly or not. It would make a lot more sense for me to have those put into a single document and run it that way.
That's kind of the feedback I was looking at, because the other document that I sent out was the budget calendar, and these two kind of go hand in hand. So these are both pre-existing kind of documents.
Right.
And that's kind of this big question that I have with these two documents. Should we just blend them into one? That can be pretty easily done, I think, but I just didn't want
I think it would make a lot more sense.
Okay.
Because the vast majority of warrant articles are budget articles ultimately. And I think that just treating them as somehow running in parallel just is confusing. I don't know. What do you think, Robin, Dave?
I think whatever's makes sense for Chris and Suzanne, because they're going to be the keepers of this. it is nice to have just one calendar that we're looking at. Um,
Put much more diplomatically than I would put it. Thank you.
Right.
Well,
But
the
again,
other,
this is a brand new process. I
Yeah,
think I think just creating this calendar ahead of time is a huge win for the town.
absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
So I think, let's put it all together, Chris, if that
Mhm.
isn't
Yeah.
difficult. And then
Mhm.
and then, at the after town meeting, let's do sort of a deep dive. Are there things we should
Yeah.
change? Did things work? Did things not work?
Yeah,
and then
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
talk about color coding then and doing all that. But those are finesse points. But I would agree. I
Mhm.
think giving it at least 30 seconds of thought that having everything on one calendar would be the most efficient. Because what you don't want is someone to look at the wrong calendar and miss
That
a date.
that would be me. But you know what
well,
I was thinking of me, but that's all right.
what I
well, I
really
also
like
found it.
about this, Chris, is it has everything on it. It has
Yeah,
because what we tend to do is just focus on one item, like we don't think about when the warrant closes. We don't, and that impacts everything. So, the only thing that I would like to add is once I love completed check marks. So once one of these things are completed, I would like whoever somebody should get the satisfaction of putting a check
Yes.
mark next to it.
All right, Robin, you have
I
your
couldn't
new
agree with you.
task. So I've got one, or actually a couple of suggestions to think about. One, a couple years ago, there was a warrant sponsor article, a sponsor of warrant articles timeline
Mhm.
that was created.
true.
I believe that Felicia's the keeper of that now. If you're going to move the warrant committee's open hearing up 1 week, then that will have to be edited because that falls through as well. And then I would just ask that both Jim and Felicia get a good look at this before it goes live because they're gonna they have a different point of view and they might think of something we don't.
Right, but also
Yeah,
keep in mind this is a living document, so when we find things that we miss, we just need to add them.
True.
Right. And that was really my thinking about having it in one document because then it's much more easy to review what might be missing.
agreed. And I think you all make great points. And that's why I wanted to seek feedback because, truth be told, we haven't written this by Jim yet. And we want to make sure that, even
Right.
those dates are viable. But I think in your feedback, you've uncovered the challenge of coordinating one of these massive efforts where there's so many stakeholders, right? So,
Right. Right.
yeah, I mean, I think the goal is to make the incremental changes and then think more critically about it during the process and make notes as we go along. And just like a lot of other things that we're doing this year, is that we'll make some time to circle back and debrief and let everybody get feedback on how it all went. So yeah, absolutely. I'll blend the schedules together, and then the plan will be to ship them off for some additional feedback.
So Chris, your comment gave me another idea.
Mhm.
So, maybe we should add a column with stakeholder or responsible party or something.
We do have that on the budget side.
Oh,
Yeah, you
am
can
I
see.
looking at the one wrong? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right.
So another example of the two
Right.
sheets
Right.
conflicting.
Yeah.
So
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay,
Yep.
good.
And I will, I think like the scope of some of these sheets, I mean, like it's a big project. It's a big process. So
Right. It's a
without a
huge
doubt,
process.
it can get increased. But I just wanted to stress like the context that we looked at this through these edits was purely based on, working with the warrant committee mostly. And I think most of the changes you'll see are reflective to support the Blue Book process, but we're absolutely open to other types of feedback and suggestions, and honestly learn from the other big stakeholders that are part of this process of what might make their life easier.
Right.
Just out of idle curiosity, seeing I did spend some time on the Warren Committee, and one of our biggest challenges was always the printer. Has there been any move in trying to consider alternative printers and alternative schedules? Because the printer was always incredibly inflexible in terms of when he had to have stuff if he was going to print it, and it seemed to be a little bit too. The timeline seemed to be far too long.
Yeah, so this, and part of the reason why it took a little bit longer to put forward this draft, because I did work with some of the printers that I've had experience with in the past for these type of deliverables. And what you'll see here is reflective of the schedule for a different printer. And in order to make sure that the Blue Book is in households by the 16th, it would need to be, they need 10 business days to turn it around to the doorstep of households. So
That's a
reflected in
significant
the
improvement.
timeline.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is, but it's all the work that goes into it before, right? Like once we
Exactly.
hand it off, we kiss it goodbye. So yeah, it is a tighter turnaround. There's a pretty big cost difference as well, and obviously this would be formatted for the new template and materials and printing choices as well. So that's why I wanted to stress that this is primarily this feedback that is incorporated in this version is reflective of the Blue Book and making that big kind of end product change.
All right. So Chris, I think you generally get the sense that we think this calendar is great and there are a few edits that need to get made. Do we really need a motion for us to approve it, or?
So I don't think so. This is a question Mona and I had talked about before. I think it's just historically something you've approved, but no, I think as long as there's consensus, this isn't something that formally needs a vote. It just traditionally has been voted.
Right. So I think what would be great is once we get the draft one of the budget or revision one of this calendar, then just like the goals, maybe we just keep looking at it every meeting and seeing where we have check marks and where we're behind. Chris, maybe we can have
Yeah.
assistant town administrator / director of finance corner. We need Chris's own segment.
So what we can do and what we intend to do is make the tracker readily accessible to all the
Excellent.
kind of stakeholders
Okay.
as part of this. So it can certainly, obviously, Mike, I hope not overstepping, but it can be part of a packet. We can communicate the status of things that way using that document. And I think it's
Sounds
just
great.
it's just a more cleaner, official way, kind of to have a primary source information for
Okay.
being involved. So
All
we
right.
can definitely commit to that.
Right. So
Right. And one other, perhaps one other column that you might want to add is a status column on it, and whether that's the check mark column or whether it's overdue, sort of a red X that it's over, it's late. That would be helpful to draw our attention to where the squeaky wheels are.
Yep. 1 second. I'm just trying to see if I can find the tracker just to show you. But I don't want to waste too much time. But yeah, that's certainly a suggestion. The tracker, I'm not going to waste time noodling around and pull it up, but it does have columns for kind of key actions when, and part of this is also my first experience being involved this closely with the process. So I'm going to learn a lot too. But, if a board committee votes on approving the status of an article, like we'll capture that vote. And that can be one of the ways that we put a cap on an article, say this one's done. And that's some of the data that we're hoping to capture.
Okay. So maybe, because when we scan things in, is there a way just to share a Google link so we can just, because it's a lot easier to
Mhm.
look at these things on your computer.
Yep. Yep.
So that
Yeah, I
way,
mean, all these docs will be digitally based. I think, I think we accept this, where I'm probably going to misspeak just from my lack of experience in the process, but if we accept warrant articles on paper, if they have to be stamped in or received by the clerk, we'll definitely scan those
okay,
actual physical documents into the computer, and that will be what is sent out on January 8th.
okay.
Then Suzanne and I will convert those, what was submitted, to the warrant committee forms, and then it'll be kind of off to the races. We'll explain all this as it goes along as well, but
All right. Okay, so Chris, you've just gotten yourself a standing corner. You're gonna be giving us updates.
Just make sure you're looking out of the corner and not into it.
All right, so do you guys, Mike, do you want us to vote on this calendar or?
No, I think given the
Okay.
changes, I don't
Yeah.
want you to vote
Okay.
anything
All right.
is in final. And again, as I said, I think it's just something historically you've done, but there is no requirement or need to vote. It could just be
Right.
simply consensus. And as you said, we'll have a standing Chris item, and you can just keep up to date on. I think that's more than sufficient.
Okay, all right. But Chris, thanks.
Yeah.
It
This is gonna be
seems
helpful.
like it took, I know the amount of work that it took to put together these 2 pages. So
it seems like a simple adjustment,
exactly.
but
It's not.
there's a lot of work that went into it just to make a simple adjustment, but we'll see how it goes, and see if we can simplify it from there.
So
No,
you can
that's-
ask Suzanne to make these changes? Is that?
Yeah, we'll work on it.
He's
I'll
not
combine the
denying it, Dave.
We're gonna try to ship it out sooner rather than later to get feedback, because I think the unfortunate timing, partly my own fault, is that the guidance letter is gonna go out, and we're gonna have be disjointed for a little bit with the calendar, but
I would
we'll
put a
make sure.
date on ask why your feedback by, and just
Yeah.
apologize for the short notice, but if you could please
Yep.
get this back to us within 72 hours,
Right.
we would be grateful, because it's time to start the budget season.
Right. I mean, the
Yep.
reality is the more time you give people, the more time they're gonna take. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
just
And
make them
we're not making major changes to the
Right.
process.
No.
And I think that's intentional. So
yeah, we're
That's
tracking it. Right.
Mhm. Yep.
I'll tell you, smart sheets would be a great way to do this. But that's
You
for
think so?
next year. That's for next year. It would be awesome. This
Fair
is
enough.
an awesome application for smart sheets.
It sounds like a good summer job for you, Robin.
Yeah.
To put it into a smart sheet.
Right. All right. So well, thank you very much to you and Suzanne. I just think this is going to be a great addition to the whole process, and
Oh, yeah.
and it's going to
An
help us.
invaluable addition,
Right,
indeed.
It's gonna help
It's really
everyone.
important.
Everyone.
Absolutely.
You could be, I'm just going to pick the library, and there's like, when is
Right.
that due? Boom.
Right.
Mhm.
All right, so the next item of business is approval of the annual renewal of the package store and club liquor licenses. This is an annual thing. So in November of each year, the Commonwealth requires that Dover, and I'm assuming all other towns as well, package stores and club liquor licenses get renewed. So both the Swami Ni Ling Corporation, DBA Dover Wine Company, and the American Legion have met the monetary insurance and inspection requirements, and the documents will be submitted to the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission for its approval. So if there are no questions, then I'm just going to make the motion. We do this every year.
I understand that. I just want to make sure there's been like no complaints or anything that would throw us off, right?
No,
Correct.
not that I'm aware of.
That's all I wanted to confirm.
Okay, so then I move to approve the renewal of the annual retail package goods store license for Dover Wine Company for 2026.
Second,
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
I, Dave Haviland.
I can, Hudson. I think it's interesting that they also do business as Liquor World in
Yes, I
Millis
saw that on the thing.
Right.
So,
on their check.
And then I move to approve the renewal of the club license for the George B. Preston Annual Legion Post 209 for 2026.
second,
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
I, Dave Haviland.
I can, Hudson.
All right, excellent. So now item 1.5, and this I believe is an annual event, but it seems as though we've done quite a bit of cleanup since last year.
So I think I'll rephrase that and say
Perhaps.
it ought to be an annual event, but
Okay.
we've not done this in a number of years. So this
Okay.
is doing some catch up. Yes.
So my memory is failing me. All right. Okay. So in the past, um, it has been the town's practice, and it was at one point done annually, um, to basically abate uncollectible ambulance bills. So, the ambulance bills are sent out, and for the most part, a big effort is done to collect them, but some of these are just uncollectible. And so the treasurer and collector, Joanne Russo, is requesting that the board abate 34 ambulance bills totaling $28,723.70 that have remained unpaid. Comstar Ambulance has made multiple attempts to collect on these accounts without much success. And this covers a period July 2nd, 2018 through December 28th, 2022. So it's a 4-year period for,
Well, it was also COVID, so
right,
it is what it is.
right. And I know a lot of effort goes into trying to collect these, but I think, with COVID, with us getting employees in these key positions, we're now going through some of the items that just weren't done in prior years because we simply didn't have the resources. So if there are no questions, I'm going to move to approve the abatement of 34 ambulance bills totaling $28,723.70, covering the period July 2nd, 2018 through December 28th, 2022.
I will second that, but I do have a question.
Okay.
Mike, is this typically of what all towns do of our ilk? I mean, they
Yeah.
try,
No.
they collect, and then
Absolutely. So most communities don't have their own billing staff, so we use a third-party biller. So we provide all the information for our ambulance runs. They actively try to collect those. Usually insurance being the first line of defense, then direct pay. Um, we have approximately a 95% collection rate, which is very good. 90% is considered excellent, so we're above that rate. We bring in about $100,000 to $120,000 per year in ambulance fees, and in exchange for the collection, the billing company takes 5.5% of what they bring in. That is their fee that they make. And so, yes, at a certain point, as Robin said, usually it's done on a more regular basis. But to your point, COVID and staff turnover, we're trying to do some catch up. And so these are abated to kind of clear them off the books, if you will.
right, it's 3.5 years worth.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So
Right.
it will continue to work and move up in more recent years. So you may see this again sooner rather than later as we try to catch up. But and then you'll also see generally each year, if it's called for, we also do an adjustment on the rates as well. So that would probably be sometime after the new year that you'll see that as well, the billing rates.
Super. Thank you very much. I'm all set.
Right, so it's
Mhm.
about $8,000 a year, which given collection of 120, it's not,
Right.
it just seems like a big number because it's 3.5 years.
Yeah, and most of the ones that we have to abate are people that, either have deceased or deceased, to live out of state, didn't have insurance. Maybe sometimes we just don't get all the correct information for people. But again, we have a pretty good collection rate.
A 95% collection rate is good. So do I have a second?
You did. Yes. Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Dave Haviland.
I Cam Hudson.
All right. So the next item of business is appointments, committee appointments. Dave, I know that you take one step forward and three steps back with your 3 to 5 committee, but I'm glad to see that we have some appointments.
Well, that's good because we can't have any more resignations without
I
putting
know
people on.
you get somebody to volunteer and then 2 people resign, then you get it.
I'm like, is it me? I'm like, sorry. So, yes, but do you want me to speak to the 3 to 5 or just go right through it because it's pretty perfunctory? These
Right.
people
It's
have nicely
pretty
offered to.
perfunctory, so I can do that. And then the other thing, so let's get this out of the way, and then we also need to appoint a Board of Selectmen to the Dover Police Association union contract negotiation team. And since there's only one of us who isn't on one of these teams,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. You're breaking up.
so you cool with us appointing you, Dave?
I was warned by Mike earlier in the week that this was a remote possibility.
Unless Cam, you want to do it.
No, I'm happy
You
with
have
what
one
I've got.
already. All right.
Yeah.
I was
We're
gonna say,
gonna-
no, seriously, it's
We're going to spread the joy.
exactly. So I'm happy to do it.
Okay. All right. So
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Dave.
then I'm going to move to appoint James Stewart and Lee Gessmer to the Board of Selectmen Membership Size Study Committee.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Dave Haviland.
I Cam Hudson.
And I would like to thank James and Lee for volunteering for this
Yes.
important committee. And next, I move to appoint Dave Haviland to the Dover Police Association Union Contract Negotiation Team.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Dave Haviland.
I Cam Hudson.
All right. And item, did I jump? 1617. It's you, Mike. The update on the goals and priorities.
Perfect. So just a few updates since our last meeting. Just kind of go through order. And some of this I'll defer, but I'll let Cam on Selectmen's Update talk about his next office hours. This is under communications. And then just to say we continue to receive such positive feedback on our communications efforts. In the last 2 weeks, I usually try to take just a quick walk on my lunch break. And I've run into 2 different people who stopped me to just say how much they appreciate it and get information out of the newsletter or social media posts. So thanks to Chris and Suzanne for all their efforts and everyone who contributes to the newsletter. It really is making an impact. It's just really nice to hear that. Under quality of life.
And it's noticeable, Mike. It really is. You see that it's taking it to a new level. And I think we can be really thankful to Chris and Suzanne on that. I think it's a great achievement.
Agreed. Under quality of life, again, I'll defer to Cam later, but the sidewalk committee is scheduled to meet again, which is great. Under finance, I'm happy to report that we've had some positive movement on our town accountant position. We've conducted initial and second round interviews, and hopefully we'll be coming to the board fairly soon with a finalist candidate. But that's been really nice to get that moving. Again, we've had really awesome consultants, but we're all really looking forward to having permanent employees in the building, which will be great. And also, Chris already mentioned, but I had on my notes that we continue to work with the warrant committee on the blue book and changes, which I think are really exciting. So that's great. On the waterfront, I know I shared with the board just for the public's benefit. Aquarian continues to research all of the possibilities and do feasibility study and all the possibilities for water in Dover. One of which, at the suggestion of Selectman Haviland, they did do some test wells on the Ponzi land. They've been to a couple meetings where we talked about that. And it was a good news, bad news situation. And that good news is there was sufficient water on the site. Bad news is they did find high levels of PFAS, unfortunately, even higher than their existing wells. So, again, that's just to set expectations. They'll continue to evaluate that as a possible site. Obviously, it would need treatment facilities, but, in an ideal world, it would have come back nice, pristine water. But again, they'll continue to follow that through, but just wanted to bring that update back since we did talk about it here at a public meeting. And they anticipate to be before you at one of your December meetings to give you an update on where they're at that time and how things are progressing. So I'll keep you updated once we have that date set. Under boards and committees, we're working with town council to schedule the training that we put on our goals. So this would be everything from open meeting law, how to effectively run a meeting, ethics considerations. So I think we've heard from some of the boards and committees who are actively looking for that. And I think that'll be well received. And we'll look to record that as well. So for board and committee members that aren't able to attend, we'll have that recording available and send that out so people could watch it after the fact. So I think it would still be helpful. And then just in terms of special projects, online permitting continues to move forward. Thanks to Chris and Jason Belmonte, who's serving as our project manager. We had, I think it was last week, my weeks are getting all messed up. Last week we had staff training and getting closer and closer to implementation, which is great. We already talked about the 3 to 5 community and Dave's trials and tribulations, but I think it's great that that's moving towards coming together. And then lastly, one of the goals involved a review of our town public ways. As you might recall, this made it at the suggestion of some of our land use committees because we ran into issues where during some of the planning board and zoning board of appeals processes, there was some uncertainty about some of our roads and whether they were actually accepted, and if they were by town meeting, if the proper paperwork was followed through over a number of years and filed with the registry. So town council continues to work through that, and just wanted to say thanks to our town clerk, Felicia Hoffman, who's doing a lot of research on behalf of town council, looking into very old, dusty town meeting warrants, getting dirty as she goes through them, trying to pull some of that historical data, which is really important. So we are very hopeful we'll have a really nice list, and then if necessary, and we anticipate it will be, to come to town meeting with kind of a cleanup warrant article to say, hey, we thought we did these roads. They were supposed to be public, they're not, and let's get it fixed. So that continues to move forward as well. And that's all I had for the goals tonight.
All right, well, thank you. So the next item is the Board of Selectmen updates. So I will start. I attended the planning board meeting last night. It was another very full agenda. And one of the takeaways from that meeting, which is something we should probably get a small group together to address, is the inconsistency in enforcement of some of our bylaws. So that was one of the things that came up in the meeting. There seems to be a little bit of confusion, and it made me, and I think some of the efforts that we've talked about, just educating the different customers that we have on some of the new bylaws. And I really believe that the online permitting system is going to really help with this issue because it's just going to make the various applications for permits more visible to all the different departments. So I think what happens is maybe sometimes the information doesn't flow as quickly as it should. And then we do have just tree companies that aren't aware of the stormwater water bylaw. There's also some contractors that seem not to abide by it on a consistent basis. So I don't think we can solve this overnight. I mean, everybody agreed that the online permitting system is a step in the right direction, but maybe we could just get a small group together and brainstorm a bit and see how we might be able to educate all stakeholders and thereby make sure that things don't happen that shouldn't have happened in the first place.
I actually agree with that. I've mentioned compliance in the past with our bylaws, and it sounds like we got a similar phone call from the same person. Um, so, but it does raise a larger issue, and if you would like to do it with a small working group, that's fine. I think, uh, Chris, with your process of implementing with the online permitting, it presents the town with an incredible opportunity to fix, I'm going to use everything going forward.
Right.
So past bad habits have to end, and past deficiencies have to end. And if we put everything on this online permitting system that requires a permit, then all of our inspectors, all of our committees, all of our citizens, everybody can go in and look and see what's going on. But
Right.
there's
Yeah,
another
it's that
more,
transparency element that I think is really important in the whole thing. Yeah.
But I think we also need to be realistic and it can't get fixed overnight and it's going to
Right.
be a gradual process. And so we should maybe talk about, are there priorities that we want to address and how do we address those? Because certainly if you didn't do anything, I believe it would ultimately fix itself just because there's going to be a whole lot more transparency. So let's address the priorities and see if they're, because it's just all, I guess I fundamentally believe that many of these issues are oversight and just not having knowledge. So we need to figure out how to educate. But then if if there is a consistent behavior pattern, we need to make sure that there are consequences to it.
yes, that's when enforcement comes in, not out of the first time, oh my gosh, I had no idea, I'm so sorry.
Right.
That's not what we're after here. But when you have the same actor doing the same thing multiple times and literally snickering behind our backs, that's got to stop.
Right.
But even the one-time offender, if they don't fix what they've done,
Right. In a timely manner. So,
correct. I mean, but if it's been a year and there's been no movement, then that to me is too long. I mean,
right.
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
that's that's what was obvious or apparent in at the planning board meeting, that some of these issues had been going on for a very long time. And
mhm.
but
And there
again,
are
we're
similar
not gonna,
issues that the Concom is confronted with as well, Robin, possibly with the same actors as well.
right.
So I think that it extends really across the spectrum of departments and committees.
Right. So, again, I think we have to be realistic. We only have so many resources, as in human resources, and there's just so much one can do. So, again, let's figure out what the education will be, and then are there priorities that we want to address?
So how do you want to address it, Robin? Do you want to put this on a future agenda for us with?
Why don't I talk a little bit to Mike and brainstorm, and then we'll bring back a suggestion.
Perfect,
Okay?
perfect.
The I do want to say on a very positive note, once again, the town planner is really dotting every I, crossing every T when making sure that she gets all the paperwork. So it's making the site plan reviews really a lot more simple. And I think the experience is good for the homeowners and their contractors and for the planning board as a whole. So again, I've just seen a huge improvement in preparedness at these meetings, which are making them go much more smoothly. So kudos to everybody for getting all the information because the planning board does have to approve quite a lot of things and it is just a whole lot more efficient when you make sure that you have all the information available that you need and it's sent out ahead of time.
No, that's nice of you to say about Melissa and the town employees. So well done.
Right, right. And again, I already see that there's a lot of communication within the land use departments. So all of these are positive. So I hate to bring up the negative, but we'll brainstorm and figure out
Mhm.
how to fix that as well.
And talking about the positives, Robin, I was a fly on the wall in the training for the permitting system, and it's very impressive what they've done so far. And so I think it's the basis for a really becoming a good, really good tool. And it's quite evident that the transparency element will be really helpful right across all the departments in the town.
And Chris and I talked about how there's so many more things you could actually add to it. So
Mhm.
suddenly we're he just says every day there's a new, it could be one-stop shopping for so many different of the
Yeah.
town applications. The
Mhm.
other thing is Chris and I got together also to go over the financial model and to put a game plan into place to update it. Our goal is that we're going to have at the beginning of January the first pass of it, so we know what the bogey is. Again, it's the first time we're going to be doing it on our own, so we're going to keep the model as is and then make improvements to it the next year. But we agreed that what we're going to do is meet regularly between now and the end of the year. So to make sure come January, whatever information we have in the budget, it's all loaded into the model and we can begin to figure out what we need to do. The other thing he and I talked about, and we started making a list of the various levers that we know we can pull. What are some of the things that have been nice to do, but we may not necessarily need to do. So we're really trying to be proactive with that. And those are my updates. I also do have a conflict with the December 4th meeting, so I'll coordinate with Mona and maybe find another date to do it.
Okay. Yeah. So am I up?
Yep.
Well, sustainability is meeting tonight, so I'm unable to make that meeting. So strike one. We've already talked about the 5 to 3, I mean the 3 to 5 committee. So that one's out. Uh, the financial working group, Joanne and Chris are very close to getting all the data that we're going to need to kind of launch forward. As you saw with the cleanup on the ambulance billing,
Good.
Joanne has been working very hard, and we're getting cleaned up. So as much as patience is not my strong suit, we're
Mhm.
close, right, Chris? So, because we're chomping at the bit to go. If nothing else, the first people we owe a meeting with is the library board of trustees. So as soon as that data is available, if we could reach out to the library board and get something on the books, they've waited long enough, and not only that, but they need an HVAC system, a new roof. So I'm kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
That's
I've
that.
got something to add on that too,
Yeah,
Dave.
yeah, you can go. You can do that in a minute. I was doing it just more fun.
Mhm.
So last night, both Cam and I had a wonderful opportunity to see the Board of Health in action. And Dover is now the 19th community in Massachusetts where nicotine products will not be available for sale for anyone born after 1/1/25. So it was a unanimous vote by the Board of Health. It was very interesting. There were approximately 20 people that spoke. Two lived in Dover, two worked in Dover, and everyone else was from the outside industry. It was interesting.
That's very
Um,
interesting.
but just so everyone knows, that was passed last night. Um,
And the
and
meeting was conducted with great professionalism, and I was really impressed how that all worked out. I think it was very well done.
yes, it was. So kudos to the Board of Health and for their process. So that's what I have.
All right, Cam, you're up.
So the Open Space Committee is holding its meeting tonight as well. So I'm with Dave in having conflicts. But the Open Space Committee did raise a question about the status of the monitoring program for the wells, and they were under the impression that the wells were monitored automatically, and the data will be uploaded and available for analysis. The reality is that it's not quite so simple. The practice has been largely manual, and Carl Warnick has to go around to the wells once a month and get the data together. I think that it might be worthwhile for us at some point to take that up and see, what it might cost to automate that process, and perhaps it might end up being a savings to us, and certainly would make the data much more transparent if we could get that into an automated environment. So I think that's something that's worth considering. I'm not sure, Mike, what the process would be for doing that, but I'd certainly be interested in your advice on that.
Absolutely, yeah. We can talk about that, and we're continuing to just look at our end because there is a possibility we have some devices in those wells, even though no one was aware of how to read them. So yeah, well, let's touch base, and I think it makes a lot of sense, not only for the transparency, but also the automatic monitors take a daily reading. So we just have a lot more data points versus the once a month manual reading. So.
Right.
And I just realized I was going to contact Ron Myrick, so I will do that and see if he has any data. So
Oh, right. Great. The first meeting of the Sidewalk Safety Committee is going to be on November 17th.
congratulations.
And we're actually moving it forward. And we have a couple of residents who will be participating as well. I think the sort of initial sort of scope that I've been thinking about for this is to firstly listen to the schools on where what their input is going to be on road safety issues at Chickering. I think that's a really significant one. And our initial impression was that they don't think that the issues are particularly severe, but I think I'd like to understand that a little bit better, and certainly in a public environment that would be good to do. Then another aspect of that is to understand how other towns are dealing with safety issues in the intermediate vicinity of no-walk schools such as Chickering. So Chickering is sort of designed on the basis that everybody will be brought in by buses or by parents. And so the question is, what is the need? How do other towns deal with that, and whether that we can get some guidance from them as to how to approach it. And then we need to also determine how current child safety management might suggest a need for sidewalks in the vicinity of the school, or whether there are some other solutions to that. So that's another thing we've got to drill down on. And then finally, more broadly, I think this is fundamentally underlying the whole question: where and what criteria do we use to actually construct sidewalks in the town, and how do we prioritize those? And so I think we're going to actually drill down on that in that committee to try and update. There has been some attempt to do that in the past that we're familiar with, but we need to sort of drill down on that a bit more and see how that might be updated, and how we can make a more general sort of set of rules, so that when somebody comes along, as I saw a recent Melissa sent out a note how a citizen was asking for a sidewalk along Centre Street, and I mean, it's possibly a very reasonable request, but the trouble is we have no way of prioritising that against every other resident who thinks that they need a sidewalk going past their house. And so we need to come up with a way of dealing with that makes it transparent and not seem that we're just being dismissive of people's needs.
Yeah, so I think that's something that you should probably coordinate with the planning board.
Yes, and Melissa is going to be on this committee as well.
Okay.
So I think we'll certainly cover that. And then what else?
Well, before you move on, Cam, that's a huge widening of the scope of just looking at the safety issues around the Chickering School and the sidewalks and kids getting on and off of buses and whatnot, to expanding that to the town, because traditionally the town has been very much against installing sidewalks and becoming like a Needham with the takings and all that. So
No, I certainly realize that, and I don't think it's an attempt to expand the scope too much more than just to understand how do we prioritize construction of sidewalks, if at all, in the town. And we haven't got a sort of consistent way of going back to, a resident who says, I need a sidewalk past my house, it's imperative. And all we can say is, sorry, no go. That's not a particularly satisfying situation either. So I think we've got to somehow get our arms around it, but I don't expect it to be a large scope exercise to say we're going to plan sidewalks throughout the town. But we do need to have a way of saying, well, how do we prioritize that?
Well,
What are the criteria we need?
Or this is the criteria, and this is why it can't.
Exactly.
And I think this
Exactly.
Planning board was
Just to
looking.
give a little background, so Dave, following the citizen petition at town meeting, we had multiple other residents reach out interested in doing additional citizens petitions for the sidewalks in other areas of town. And so that's part of how this conversation came to be, that yes, we were addressing a very specific citizens petition, but there are other people who would like to bring more areas of town forward. And so that was why we thought we'd look a little more holistically at sidewalks as well.
And it's always been on the planning board's agenda. And I mean, part of that town center, and I think the DPW was also, it's just because the issue we have is there is a citizens petition, and then a small section of a sidewalk shows up. So we really need to have a philosophy about sidewalks.
Exactly. And even if it's a philosophy in general, we don't put in sidewalks.
Right, exactly. At least we have.
Then we've got a clear sort of stance on it. But at the moment, it seems a little bit wishy-washy. We don't really know how to approach and deal with those requests.
Yeah, there is a policy, and I think it's the planning boards. Okay, you're aware of it.
Yes,
I'm trying to.
yes, I am aware of that, and
Great.
it seems to
Melissa's
be
on the
somewhat
committee.
right, and it seems to be somewhat outdated as well. So even if it's just a question of reviewing that and updating it, I think is
Or,
one possible approach
right.
that the committee might take.
Or letting people know that it exists.
That too,
And you
and
can't
that might,
just, right.
yeah, and that might be something we could work with Chris on publishing in some form. The other point I wanted to raise was I noted at our last meeting that Mike and I attended a meeting, as did several other members of town departments, a meeting with the MBTA Advisory Board. And in that meeting, they offered the opportunity for us for a subsidized bus or something like that to help with particularly the Council of Aging type transport needs. And Janet Claypole mentioned, well, we've tried that in the past and it wasn't particularly successful. But Kevin, who is our rep on the MWRTA, which is a sort of Metropolitan West transport grouping, and he reached out to that committee, and they've offered to come and have a meeting with members of that. Mike, Kevin, Melissa, and a couple of others, just to get a better, and Janet, to get a better understanding of how they might be able to help us around that whole problem, is how difficult it has been to get people to use those services effectively. So that's something else. Another one, turning back to the library, Dave, Mike and I will be attending the next library trustees meeting on November the 18th to give them an update on the status of the HVAC project. I think they've been both patient and indicating their frustration about how long it's all taking, and so we decided let's just bite the bullet and go and talk about it and give them a better sort of path forward on how we resolve these issues. Mike, I don't know whether you want to add anything more on that one.
Nope, I think you covered it. I think it should be a good meeting and good just to have that open dialogue.
Excellent.
And then sticking with the library, I have office hours at the library on November 12th around a presentation by, now I'm going to get his name wrong, Dante Scaramecchio, who was a line coach for the Patriots for many years, and he's giving a presentation there. So I'm busily trying to study up on who Dante is, because I don't know the first thing about American football. It's going to be embarrassing if I have to have a discussion with a football fan about how the town is promoting football.
Google's your friend.
Yeah.
Get your Keurig coffee skills ready.
Oh, yeah.
The
I
kids
can
are
always
there drinking apple cider and they all need help. I made a lot of friends because I had those skills.
That's funny. That's all I had to report.
All right, well, thank you. And Mike?
So I just had a few updates that we didn't already hit on. One is the Drought Management Task Force is meeting on Thursday this week, so I will attend and report back to the board if our drought status is changing. And I think we're probably getting to the point where even if it doesn't change, it's probably appropriate to start finding a date to take the signs down. I know there is still some watering going on with new lawns and things, but I think we're hitting the end of that.
We ought to pick a date and just say, please take them down on or about, I'm going to make this up, November 15th.
So it's funny you said, that's exactly what I was thinking, mid-November.
Right.
I think that happens to be a Saturday, so I'll ask if we could do it the day or two before.
Yeah, you know, that's details. Just
It's,
tell
no,
me.
no,
November
but same
14th.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, mid-November seemed like a reasonable
Right.
slot to do that. So, um, I don't think Robin mentioned this. Senator Roush is coming for a visit to the community center this week
Oh, I
on
forgot
Friday.
about that on
So
Friday.
we'll have some staff there. She was unable to attend Dover Days, but really wanted to come and see the facility and understand how the community is benefiting. So I thought that was great. She's going to come out. And then lastly, I feel like I'm jumping Dave on this one. I don't know. Can you see? What do you see on the screen?
Food drive.
Oh yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. I just wanted to thank Janet Claypool, our COA director. She had reached out to A Place to Turn as we've been getting inquiries from residents of how they can help, given the status of the SNAP benefits being discontinued for this month. She worked with a Place to Turn to find out kind of what was needed, and they've offered at the community center to accept items, and we will arrange to get those to A Place to Turn to give out. So I just thanks to Janet and Mark for doing this, and Janet for reaching out based on the fact that people were calling looking to do something. How can I help? And so I thought that was a great thing, and just really appreciate that. So
We could just drop these food items off. So these are the most needed items, right?
That's right. This was the feedback from A Place to Turn that these are the most needed items, ensuring that the non-perishable items are not expired. Very nicely, people often go through their pantries and things and donate items from there, but we do want to, that is an important piece of information. And yes, they can be dropped off at the community center.
Okay.
We do have the wall of shame. Someone actually gave a can of food that expired in 1993.
I think this is a great approach, and I really appreciate that. I was worried. I sort of saw in the Boston Globe there are 81 people in Dover that do receive SNAP. So it's not as if we don't have a population that is really challenged by this environment. And I really am extremely happy that that Janet has taken up the cudgels and run with this. I think that's wonderful.
Yes, and then so just for full disclosure, to let everyone know, I am on the board there, and when I saw this come in personally, I literally freaked out. I couldn't wait to send it to the director over at A Place to Turn, and I have to tell you, my faith in humanity is being restored because I was over there. I buy food for them on Monday mornings, and I couldn't feel like, why are all these cars coming in and out? And someone made the comment, that's the third time he's been here today. And I'm like, what's going on? They are Instacart drivers. People are now, and then the Amazon truck pulled up and literally disgorged almost the entire van. And it was all food and diapers. So that's what people are doing. They're just saying, all right, well, instead of Instacarting to my house, I'm going to send it to A Place to Turn.
Wow,
And
that's a great idea. Okay.
so whatever's most convenient for people, but a very personal thanks to Janet and Mark, you said
Yep.
was, well, thank you both. The need, just to let everyone know, 10 years ago, we were serving a few thousand people a year. Last year, it was 38,000 people. So, and that was before any of the current budget impasse.
And I just noticed it's not just food. People also need personal care items. So
Yes. Diapers and feminine hygiene, we consider to be a grocery item.
right. But there it also said toothpaste, shampoo, etc.
Yep. Sure. Yep.
Great.
All
So,
right.
sorry, Mike, but a big thank you because obviously it's near and
no,
dear.
Right.
agreed.
And I agree with Cam. I was just thinking to myself, how do you help?
Yeah.
So Now I know. I just have to go down to the community center, and I'm going to be there on Friday. So
There you go.
I'll go shopping before. Um, so now the last item of business is the consent agenda, and it consists of the following items: a vote to accept and expend a $200 gift to the Historical Commission, and to approve a special one-day liquor license for November 2nd, which is retroactive. It was actually on Sunday. So I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Dave Haviland.
Hi, Cam Hudson.
All right. So Mike, I actually made a to-do list of things I have to do this time, so I'll be in touch.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Well, I now will make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Dave Haviland.
Hi, Cam Hudson. It's one of the longer meetings we've had this year.
Right. Well, thank you, everybody. I will have you know, I was at we were all at the open house, and there's a young person in Dover that detail cleaned the police car, and I am going to go pick my car up from his house now.
Oh, whoa. Uh,
He's a young entrepreneur. I expect to see him on the cover of some magazine in a few.
That's fun. So
that is
that was
fun.
well done. So kudos to the entire fire and police department.
Right.
Yeah, they did
Everyone
a
else
great
who helped.
job.
It never gets old when that ambulance lands in the green. So it just
The
does it.
helicopter, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
At least the helicopter, right? So cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And
Yep.
no, did
Have a good night.
did I take a motion? Yeah, we adjourned.
Yes, you
Yeah,
did.
good.
Right. Otherwise, the
Go
meeting
get
would
your
stay
car,
open
Robin.
until the next one. We have to call a special meeting to close it.
Okay.
All right.
Bye,
Well,
everyone.
thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.